Hello, so we'll be talking about Princess Dart Burstier this morning. We're talking about Princess Dart Burstier on how to cut the Princess Dart Burstier that you can use for the upper part of this wedding dress. Now, in these videos, you're going to just be seeing patterns, and this is the measurement I'll be using for this video. For the shoulder, I'll be using shoulder 14, bust 34, nipple to nipple 8, half length 17, waist 28. So I'll add other measurements to it later, so just follow me through as I go on in my videos. So I'll just go straight to the point where I'm going to fold the fabric into two. Now this video is majorly for the pattern drafting. You can actually do the pattern drafting correctly if you follow through or whatever it is I'm doing in this video. Fold your paper into two. I'm using a white paper so that you can be able to see what I want to do. Just fold your paper into two. So once you are done folding your paper into two, you get to work and then start the measurement of the clothes of the paper. Now I'm using paper first before transferring to my fabric. Now the first thing I'll do is I'll measure out my shoulder. My shoulder is 7. That's 14 divided by 2. That's the only thing I'm dividing by 2. And then the nipple to nipple point. So I'll measure the shoulder 7 inches. And then I'm going to measure my shoulder to the waistline. My shoulder to the waistline is 17, but I'm not going to be using 17. I'm going to be using 17. I'm going to be using 18 and half. So that's what I'm using. If you can take a very close look at this video, you will see that I'm measuring 18 and half. You see that it's 18 and half for the measurement of the shoulder to the waistline. Now the next thing I'll do is I'll draw a straight line to mark out where my length is going to get to. Now this length I have added allowance to it. That's 18 inches. I have added allowance to the length. That's 18 inches for the length from the shoulder to the waistline. That's the half waist of it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out my shoulder line from the point of where I mark the shoulder level to. I'm marking out my armhole line, and the armhole is 8. I'm using 8 inches for my armhole. That's for the length. That's for this particular length I'm drawing is 8 inches. So I'm going to draw it out this way. Just follow me through and watch what I'm doing. So after that, I am going to divide the 8 into 2 so that I can bring out my 0.5 and give out the armhole curve. So I'm doing 0.5. So once I'm done with 0.5, I would take out my curve and then I'll mark it out from there. Now I'm going to measure 1 inches down from the shoulder line. Now because of the slant, my armhole shape is not going to get to the up part, so it's going to just stop at that shoulder slant line. So from there, shoulder slant line down like that, and then I'll take the measurements that way. So once I'm done with this, I'll go to the next measurements. Please make sure your curve is curving, like it is very curvy, because it's very important. So for the neck, I'm going to be using 3 inches, and then for the width, I'm going to be using 5 inches. Now at this point, I was contemplating because I wanted a cano neck. A cano neck is what I wanted, so I'm going to be using 5 inches. Now the wider the neck, don't when your neck is wide, don't allow the length, that's the depth of your neckline, not to be very deep. If your neckline width is maybe like 3 inches, you can allow it the depth to come down as 5. It's not going to show your cleavage. Now this is to people that like their dress to be very modest. Like if you like your dress to be very modest and not to show any of your cleavage, so that's when you would include a design of this sort. So I'm going to use my neck width, like I wrote it there. I'm going to use 3.5. I wrote 3.5 at this point because I was looking at the 3.5, that 3.5 would be fine for me, but later on I had to change it to 2.5, so I moved it to 2.5 inches. instead of 3.5. Please take notes, 2.5 instead of 3.5. So I'm going to draw out my slant line, my shoulder slant. I'm going to draw out my shoulder slant. So like I stated, I'm going to move it back to 2.5 inches. So I'd already move it back to 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches for the neck depth, 5 inches for the neck width. So 2.5 inches for the neck depth, 5 inches for the neck width. So once I mark it out, I'm going to draw out the curve. Now at this point, I drew two types of curve. Now the curve I drew was, you can decide that you want your curve to come down very well, or you can decide that you don't want the curve to be, you don't want it to be too curvy, like you just want it to just give it a bit of curve round. So just watch. So at this point, I'm doing my slant. That's my shoulder slant for my shoulder. So if you can take a very close look, you can see that the neck is longer. Now I want to draw out my nipple point. My nipple point is 10. So I've marked out 10. My under bust, shoulder to under bust, is 13 inches. So at this point, I didn't know that my camera had already gone off. So I'd already drawn out the line. So I just drew a straight line. If you know you want to catch up, I just drew a straight line 10 inches, and I drew a straight line on the 13 inches. Take a very close look. You see there is 13 inches. I drew a straight line on the 13, and then it's showing my 18.5 inches for the length. So try as much as possible to draw out your line very well, because you just be needing it for your curve. That's for your side curve later on. So my nipple to nipple, like I said earlier, is 8 inches. My nipple to nipple is 8 inches. So I'll be dividing 8 inches into 2. Now I'm not going to be using exactly 4. I'm going to be using 4.5. Now why am I using 4.5 is because when I want to sew this clothes, I'm sewing allowance for it. Why the under bust? That's for the shoulder to under bust line. I'm using 4 inches. For the waist, I'm also using 4 inches. But only on the nipple point line, I am going to be using 4.5. If you notice, I wrote it down. 4.5, 4 inches, and 4 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out my nipple to nipple point, my nipple to under bust. Now you see that I've drawn this 4 inches, 4 inches. Now I'm going to draw out the line for the 4 under of the waistline and the line for the 4 on the under bust line. Both of them are going to meet each other, and I'm going to slant it out. I was trying to erase it out so that I will be able to draw it and you can see it properly from this point. So now take note, at this point I used the curve part for the under bust line. The curve part, I didn't use a straight line, I used the curve part. Why? Because that part is curved, it's not going to be straight. Now for my under bust allowance, I'm going to be using 2 inches to get out my under bust curve. 2 inches, 2 inches at the waist, 2 inches. Now the only place I am not measuring 2 inches is on the nipple point line. The nipple point line remains static, it doesn't change. I'm not adding any allowance to the nipple point part. So now I'm going to draw my what they call it, my curve for it. Now before I draw my curve, I want to measure out the curve. That's the princess cut for the upper part. Now I'm measuring 3 inches, not 3.5. I was using 4 inches for it before. Now I measure 3 inches. From my half 1 inches down, I measure 3 inches. If you take a very close look, I measure 3 inches down. 3.5. 3.5, not 3 inches, 3.5 inches. So I'm drawing out the straight line on the curve now. Now at this point, I was drawing out my curve, the line for the curve. That was what I was doing. So that's the under bust curve. Then from there, I drew out my straight line to go and meet the 3.5 inches. So if you can look at it very well, that is already taking shape. So then for my dart allowance for the upper part, I'm going to be using 1.5 inches. So I divided 1.5 inches into 2. It's going to give me 0.7. So I'm removing 0.7 from the upper part of the line, and then 0.5 from the lower part of the line. So I'm going to draw it down, and I'm going to allow it not to touch exactly on the nipple point line. Like, it's not going to meet me on the nipple point line. You can take a very close look. I allowed it to be not close to the nipple point line at all, so that I can get out my curve designs for it. So when you are done with this, make sure you draw out that 1.5 inches that you removed. You are going to draw it out again. I'm going to draw it out again, so that you can be able to get what you want to get. So I'm drawing the second part of it now at this point. If you are able to do this front part very well, you would not have any issue. Follow out all the designs I give. This is like one of the simplest method. It's simple, it's fast, and doesn't require stress. All you just need is to just put it on your clothes, on your fabric, and then trace it out. But when you are tracing it out on your fabric, try as much as possible to add 0.5 inches to the side. Don't add any more allowance to the bust. Don't add any more allowance to the bust part. Don't add any more allowance to the side part. Just only the sides that you're adding allowance to. You can decide to add allowance, and you can decide not to add allowance, because you can cut it exactly this way on the fabric, and you're still going to get your exact measurement. Like, you're going to get a very good exact measurement that will give you the best princess cut that you are thinking about. So I'm going to retrace my armhole line. I'm going to retrace my armhole line again from the point of the 1.5 inches that I am replacing. So once I'm done with that, dress is almost ready. Our dress pattern is almost ready. Now I'm going to retrace the neck part again. I'm still going to retrace the neck part again. So just watch out. The neck part is going to come out in a second version. Now this is where I'm showing you that all the measurement I am dividing by 4. The bust, the waist are the only thing I'm dividing by 4. The half length, there's no division for length. Anything length, no division for it. But in terms of the nipple to nipple point, I'm dividing it by 4 inches. So I was going to put my exact measurement back on the fabric. Now, my waist for this person I'm using is 34 inches divided by 4. That's 8.5 divided by 4. Now, for the waist measurement is 7 inches. I used 8.5 for the under bust too, and I used 8.5 for the nipple point line. So now I'm going to add back the 2 inches that I removed, the 2 inches from the under bust. That's that allowance, and then add back 1.5 inches for allowance. The 2 inches and 1.5 inches. So I'm adding 2 inches to 8.5. That's going to be giving me 10.5 plus another 1.5 inches. That's going to be giving me 12 altogether. 8.5 plus 2, that's 10.5. 10.5 plus 1.5, sorry, 11.5 inches. So 7.5 plus 2, that's 9.5. 9.5 plus 1.5, that's giving us 10.5. So I'm drawing out my curve, and then we have it there. Like I said earlier, I would like to withdraw the neckline, so I want to retrace the neckline. Now this neckline, I can decide to use this part, but I just looked at it that I wanted it to be a bit up. I don't want it to be too wide on the side. When I mean wide, I don't want my neck bone to show so much. Of course it will show, but I don't want it to be very obvious. I just want it to be on my neck bone area. So that's why I'm retracing the neckline.